in doing true crime, guys. Don't worry. I'm only interested in the dogs that are involved in true crime. There is a case, a little girl has been missing for 5 months. Her name is Summer Wells. It is a mainstream case. It has become a mainstream case. She's been on Dr. Phil, the behavioral panel that I follow. They have done, looked at for deception on the behavioral panel. And Summer has, as of yet, has not been found. And I follow this case closely, and I am praying for the best outcome for little Miss Summer Wells. And I've been doing some homework to discuss this on What's Up Dog, a dog named Wood, capital W, capital U, capital D. And I listened to an original interview with the neighbors, and the parents' names are Don and Candace Wells. And the neighbors said that the dogs were very protective of the children and would bark and yell and put up a fuss if a stranger came to the house, which was my first thought is, with all those dogs, how did this child become so abducted with these dogs? And as I was listening to him, I thought let me go back to Michelle Walks. Michelle Walks had come up with this brilliant, because she'll do a lot of discussion about cadaver dogs, search and rescue dogs, and she educates people. And by the way, that one of the dogs she walks with is a Labradoodle. And I thought this was brilliant. We're just talking dog now. Let's talk dog. She had said if they had put cameras on the dogs on the property, and apparently there were several. I'm still trying to dig up how many dogs, because I know there was lots of puppies, and I know that a dog that had been recently, hey Tabitha, what you doing? Hey girl, hey, what's up dog? Let's talk dog. A dog that had recently been placed had shown back up on the property, right? So you kind of get the impression, and they're out in Tennessee, so you kind of get the impression that people are dropping dogs off on the property. But the neighbor said the dogs, Michelle said they had put little cameras on the dogs on the property, that they would have given more information about where Summer Wells was than anything, because they're right. Dogs were going to go check on their pack. They can smell. They would absolutely know what her scent was. And if they knew where they were, they don't have the ability to speak human language. So they could be coming back and can't communicate that they actually know where Summer is. I thought that was brilliant. So let's skip forward to the neighbor as I'm doing this research on the dogs on the property at Summer Wells. Is that the neighbor said they did bark and they did make a big fuss if anybody came to the house. And this person in particular, this interview was given 5 months ago, didn't think anybody could get on that property without people knowing, because of those dogs going crazy. And it's so interesting to me, because my dogs will go crazy if you come to the house. I have one dog that would bite before thinking. I always put her up if I know I'm having company. And if somebody I don't like, I'm obviously not going to put her up, right? Because she's a little cray-cray. However, I know from personal experience, if somebody has really malintentions and they're coming on a property, the dogs can be really silent. And they could be really silent. And I don't want to say silent, they're not making noises. But when there's real impending threat, they'll do a low, horrifying growl. It's horrifying. To hear that growl of an impending threat and to watch a dog go into motion, getting ready, the chemicals changing in their brain, right? Fight or flight. Is, if you haven't experienced, I hope you never do, but if you have experienced it, you know that it is so scary. And I thought that was so interesting listening to the neighbors, because I know that I was curious. Come on, guys, they have all these dogs on the property, and the dogs didn't make a fuss. And then when I listened to them, the dogs always made a fuss. But if there was real impending threat, they might have been more quiet, doing a growl, a low growl, so that, and that they didn't know the person might have had a problem, right? But if they knew the person, because we know dogs can smell intent, they can smell bad vibes, they can smell when somebody doesn't have good intentions, right? And sometimes I've had dogs that have done this. They'll literally, that's why I like herding dogs. Herding dogs will literally get in between you and remove you. That dog I was speaking about earlier, that I was told I was crazy because I brought in the dog as a single mom and it was going to be a larger dog. That dog met plenty of veterinarians, came to work with me every day in a veterinarian clinic. And one of those veterinarians walked in, and I had never even heard that dog growl. And again, it was that low, threatened growl. Love your fur babies. I love your fur babies too, Tabitha. So, and women, you know the tone, I'm going to say that the best way I can say it, the tone of the bark is going to give you all sorts of information. So I had a woman once in Fort Lauderdale, and she had little dogs, and there was people going around knocking on doors to get people open their doors so they could rob them. And she had Pomeranians, and Pomeranians are not known to be the brightest crayons in the group, right? Prettiest crayons in the group, but maybe not the brightest. And somebody rang her bell, and this is before we had all these great cameras that we could just see outside our doors. Somebody rang the bell. I literally have an itch. Excuse me while I scratch my itch. She listened to the tone of her Pomeranians, and it clued her not to open the doors. And then was able to call the police, and these people they had very ill intents. And had she not listened to her Pomeranians, she would have opened the door, and her experience would have been completely different than the fantastic story it became about listening to the tone in the dog's bark or growl, because you hear it all the time. So when it changes, it clues you in.